Thank you very much, both of you. It's a joy to be talking about this topic, and I always get to learn when I'm around Dr. Briggs, and Megan always brings it out of me. So we already have a question pertinent to this session. Dr. Meyers, have you seen rap in Mozambique helping to overcome the effects of fatalism on youth agency? If so, how?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. Yeah, I think particular just with this case of Ibrahimu, just by writing rap, performing it, he is overcoming the sense of you have no say, you have no power to do something. And I see that manifest also with the other youth that he's involved with. He's got, 3 or 4 different rap crews that he's constantly interacting with, doing Bible studies. They're writing rap songs. They're preaching in the community. They're saying, I have something to say, and I can say it in a public sphere. So it's very validating, and it brings a sense of agency that wouldn't necessarily be there.
Mm-hmm. Ray, Dr. Briggs, your thoughts?
I'm not a specialist in Mozambique, music and culture, but I can speak to maybe hip hop in a more general way. What I've noticed is that hip hop with the African American community and many other groups has become not only the new platform of expression, but in some ways it's taken the place of other cultural institutions. Like if you look at the African American community in history, there was a time when the church was the center.
Yes.
A lot of young African Americans don't go to church anymore, and many of them talk about hip hop as if it is their faith.
That's right.
They talk about rappers as if they're prophets.
That's right.
Like they may not read the Bible, they can quote entire lyrics and say, he said this, and this, and he made me want to think about these things. So I've heard people talk about it like it's a religion, even though they may not be identifying as such. Last night, as I was getting ready for this, I was watching a program, First Nations Experience, a station, and there was an Ojibwa artist named Cody Coyote, and he was rapping about being Ojibwa and how his identity was kind of all the problems on the reservations, and the way he was talking was very much like a prophet. Oh, there we go. Very much like a prophet. And I was thinking about, and hip hop once again is the platform. Now he's rapping, and people that may not listen to a lecture will listen to him, rap to his music. He's giving the same things you would find in a lecture. So the content is there. It's just the form is a little bit different. So definitely, I think it has a way of connecting.
Right, and as with a lot of theologians, and as we teach here at Fuller, we want to have a lot of content. And since hip hop or rap is a spoken art form combined with rhythm and musical elements, then we don't give up having the opportunity to speak. I find that's, a powerful thing to consider. How is power distance different between generations in African and African American church? Whoa, who would like to start?
I already talked about the power differential in Africa, so.
Yeah. Wow. So the power differential between African Americans and
between generations.
Oh, generations.
African American church.
Okay. Yeah.
We talked previously about continuity and change in generations.
Sure. I do think that it's being renegotiated at this point. I think there's kind of a youth culture explosion. It's a smaller one. I don't think it's as big as maybe a revival, like a big outpouring. But there are some young people in the church that are trying to revitalize it. Some of them do have positions of power. You can see some of that in some televangelists might kind of walk that line. But I think in most cases, in terms of across the United States, most churches are very much held in maybe the 50, 60, 70-year-old kind of power structure. And young people feel in many ways alienated. But these newer churches that are springing up or have smaller youth departments, they do have spaces for power to kind of lean towards what they might want. And like I said before, I think when you look at the attrition, that there will be eventually a new direction, like a more concerted direction, as those young people become then pastors and so forth. We will change. But for now, I think it's in the middle.
Okay. Okay. I was just recently in Kenya this summer after being away for 10 years. And I did some research on what does worship in the African urban centers look like. And I found myself, it is so rich and it's changed so much. And I'll be writing a peer-reviewed journal article on it. But what I found in Nairobi Chapel, which is one of the largest burgeoning churches, they even have churches outside of the States, or outside of Africa, or outside of Kenya even, yeah. But what I found the pastors embracing all art forms. And I found the pastor at the lead Nairobi Chapel, he's been working with street boys who express themselves through hip hop, who just won the Groove Awards. And so they brought them up in the middle of the service. They brought them up on stage. This pastor's been mentoring these young men. He brought them up onto stage. They celebrated them, and the pastor did the hip hop with them. And that's very African to encourage participation. And the African leader, spiritual leader, joins with the group in order to identify with them. It was very powerful. And I have video of that somewhere. I'm going to make it available. Okay, here's another question. Thank you, Dr. Meyers. I personally have worked with rappers and hip hop artists in the sub-Saharan country of Zambia. But one of the biggest limits are the lack of resources, even access to instruments. How can we best support, spread, and grow these movements for upcoming musicians? You have the answers.
I wish I did. Yeah, if we could find the resources, that would be something. One of the things I've been encouraging Ibrahimu and his rap group is to consider how they can generate backtracks, generate their own musical instruments even with what is available locally. I have no problem with people borrowing from other places, and with the advent of internet, I mean, it's all right there.
It's all available.
It's all available, and everybody's got a cell phone, everybody's got access to internet in the cities anyway. But rather than just continuing to look for a handout, I want people to consider how they can themselves create stuff. So it's a both and, I think, that you continue. I'm here plugging his CDs. Buy his CDs, y'all. Okay.
Well, and help them become entrepreneurs, if I may join in.
Absolutely.
And help them find a way to have dignity and respect as they earn a living. Don't keep them in the poverty level. Here's a question that goes with that. Should churches and maybe seminaries, hint, hint, set up centers for youth to create under the guidance of artists and theologians? How would it be funded? Okay, there's that money issue again. But let's talk about creating centers or centers for youth to create under the guidance of artists and theologians. Let's start with Dr. Briggs first.
Sure. I think that would be an excellent project to have. Not only because it gives them a space to do it, and the resources here are probably better than, say, you find anywhere elsewhere, but I think it speaks to what we say a university or an institution is really about. It's supposed to be about serving and connecting with the community around it, right? Mm-hmm. We say that all the time. And I think saying to people that aren't necessarily here already to say, you are welcome here, this place is for you, not only says what you're doing is valid, but who knows what that does down the line.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. If you drive past a place and think, oh, what's that? I don't know. Oh, no, that place, I went there as a kid once, and I worked with some musicians there or some professors there. Then you feel connected to it. Where all of the city feels like it's yours.
That's right.
As opposed to we live over here, but we don't go down there. That's right. We stay over here, but we never go that way. I don't even know what that is, right? So I think, maybe it's something that I've seen. Where I teach in Long Beach, I ask my undergrads all the time, do you think where we are, the campus, do you think we reflect Long Beach, the city? In other words, if you go out into the city and you see the diversity, do you think it's proportional to what you see here? If it's not, why not? Mm-hmm. How can you have people down the street that don't end up here? What are the either potential or maybe not even something that's thought about, but what are the barriers that keep people in the community from having access? Mm-hmm. And the second question is, do we care?
Right.
Like we see they're not here. Do we care? Does it matter? Mm-hmm.
Yes. That's wonderful.
Yeah, that reminds me. I used to live and work in Detroit and did a lot of after-school arts programs. And at one point, I took a group of kids from my neighborhood 2 miles down the road to Wayne State, and they had never been there, never stepped foot on that campus. It was 2 miles away. I mean, you could literally walk there. They'd never been to an institution of higher learning. And I realized in that moment, golly, my parents are both college educated. I remember going and visiting my parents' alma mater and, being exposed to these kind of learning institutions is so pivotal in helping a kid kind of move to the next step and feel that, hey, I'm a part of this too.
Mm-hmm. I think that's something of a prophetic question as Fuller thinks about moving to Pomona and saying, well, we're moving to a semi-urban setting so that we can engage the community. Here's a very potent, powerful opportunity, way that we could engage beyond the ivory tower of the seminary and get connected with the community, which we're saying we want to do. Okay? Okay. So thank you for that question. They're coming in. I love it. The Psalms seem to embrace the full range of human emotions. What can ministry to the enraged and sorrowful look like?
I think first, I think compassion is where it starts, but I feel that compassion has to be coupled with knowledge. It's one thing to say, I care about your state, but many of these conditions exist because of complex issues behind them. And awareness by the person offering compassion of what those things are and how they came to be, I think is crucial. Because you can be compassionate to someone and not understand them or not understand the conditions that created, what affected their lives. I was teaching a class the other day and we were talking about something. Oh, actually I had a student to come in who was working with an organization trying to bring awareness. I'm not plugging anything, but they're talking about Yamaha, the company. And they were saying how musicians use a lot of instruments made by Yamaha, but that parent company also has investments in boat motors and motorcycles, things like that, and how they're lobbying and affecting or trying to repeal some environmental laws. And so she was doing a presentation to the students saying, do you know that when you buy an instrument and you're working with this company, that they also are doing these things over here? So it's not compassion or anything there, but I mean in terms of awareness of the total thing. Like if you're going to interact with it, okay, I'm doing this. Inadvertently, how may I be helping also to do something that I don't like? Right?
Oh.
So looking at it rather than kind of my heart's in the right place, but where your heart is and where you have to understand what's going on at the same time. So compassion and knowledge, right? Not just one or the other.
Thank you.
I think we've mentioned this a number of times, I think, throughout this week, listening, a posture of listening and learning is the first step. Just hearing someone else's story is, I think, the first step in having compassion, and from there, allowing them to be able to express that, not just hearing it, but then putting it into some kind of beautiful form, transforming, ashes into beautiful things.
And connecting both lectures today, it seems to me that ethnomusicology really, one of our strong suits is doing ethnography. And doing ethnography is a way of understanding the people. It's a way of listening, and that's one of our strong suits. And it comes out of the cultural anthropological tradition, and it informs our method. So we have some very potent tools that are positive tools for helping us understand a people and develop ways of listening, if I may add to that. Okay. Beyond rapping, how have you seen other elements of hip-hop empower youth in Mozambique, i.e. DJing, breakdancing, and graffiti?
We haven't seen it too much. I mean, there's a little bit of tagging that you'll see. People love to dance, but I haven't seen breakdancing. And there's a few DJs out there, but mostly it's in the just straight up rapping. writing your story. As I think Ruth Stone mentioned earlier, just the importance of a spoken word communication is so valued, that being able to communicate your story in a way that is poetic and beautiful and funny or articulate is something that many Mozambican youth enjoy doing.
Wonderful. Thank you. Here's a great one for Dr. Bruce. I think they mean Dr. Briggs. Okay. Can't get out of this one. Okay. As a professional actor, evangelist, I seek classic art because classic art underscores something unanimously human that all cultures can embrace. As an artist, I have found the church has, in pretense, often invited me to share my gift and voice, but as long as it is innocuous in nature, calcifies and controlled in form, and moderate in principle, then we are asked to revere the reverence of the Psalms, but deny its true expression of lament and extreme visceral nature. How can the church not fear nor try to control the mediating essence of the Psalms, like expression, the mediating essence of psalm-like expression, like a pat on the head? Ooh. It's a good challenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man.
Yeah. I think one response and one strategy might be to really contextualize the scriptures and think about, okay, well, what was happening and what would have, if we had a soundtrack for that time, what might have sounded like? Would it sound like what we think in terms of church music? Obviously not, right? They're not in Western Europe, right? They don't have this 4-part harmony. There's no polyphony, right? And so, but we've kind of, again, this is what I was speaking of earlier, from the result of the colonized world, get kind of like this Europeanization of history, where looking at things past are through the lens of European culture and aesthetic. And so things that were not European become European. Things that were not aligned with the aesthetic criteria become that. So I think that's where you probably want to start to say, well, would it be what we were saying it is? Or let's go back to the time period and study ethnomusicology, study the music in the region to see what would it have been like? Because it probably wouldn't have been the way that we were saying. And therefore, we have a place to say, well, now that it's not what we're expecting, we can step beyond and open up our minds to say, well, what might it be? Right? It kind of gives us a space to move.
Thank you. We have so many questions. Are there elements in rap that could change the power differential in later generations once this younger rapping generation begins to get in positions of power? Could rap fundamentally change power structures within the church?
Yeah.
Let me
That's
start.
a challenge.
Yeah, that's something that I read a class I was teaching. Michael Eric Dyson's Know What I Mean. And he's talking about how there's so much pressure put on hip hop. How people who are sometimes detracting from it might say, well, can it do this? Can it do that? Right. Well, what music has done that before? Like, we never say, can classical music, change the world? It hasn't. It's been a part of a total system, right? It's one component.
You.
So when we begin to put hip hop on that pedestal and say, well, it's only valid if it can do this, and this. Well, there's no music tradition in the history of the world that's done that. It's been connected to other powerful things. But when you do that, you set it up to fail. And usually then when it doesn't meet those, whatever that thing is, that criteria, then you begin to say, well, see, right? It can't. So I would probably start with, let's be realistic. Right. It is an artistic expression. And certainly there are other areas that need to be addressed in tandem with that. Right? So we can't just leave it by itself and say, what can it do? But I definitely can make people think, right? And then those thoughts can lead to other actions and other resources.
Right. Thank you. So one final question, kind of related to that. How can we create more space and legitimacy for prophetic gifts expressed through hip hop in our collective spaces in churches? How can we support the global leadership and influence of these young artists?
Going back to the listening bit, just giving them a platform. What about an open mic night? On a Sunday evening, allowing artists to come and share. Let them look at a psalm and explore the themes, and then write a rap based on those themes. Giving them spaces to perform and to process, that's important.
Yeah, for sure. I think maybe also asking, simple as it sounds, questions. Yep. When you sit down with someone, and I've done this time and time again, and ask them things about, hey, what do you listen to? What do you like? music. And they say, I like this. I don't know about that. Can you play it for me? Uh-huh. What do you like about this? Yeah. What do you hear? What moves you? Which song? Sometimes I joke with the students and say, if we were on a desert island together and we're stranded, what are you taking along and why that one? If you get into that space and ask someone respectfully, what is it that moves you in this music? They will share and they'll feel connected. That's right. And so I think if you started with that, for people who may not be into hip hop, just say, oh, okay, what is it that you like in this? Teach me. Yep. Like it's a place of humility. Teach me what it is that's in this music that I should find, rewarding or important.
Right. It's a mutuality. That's the mutuality aspect.
Absolutely.
There.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Let's congratulate them and thank them.
Mi yeti sheni